Welcome back to what she said. Okay, so we are going to further the conversation. Does the Colorado fan from Georgia, the anonymous Colorado fan from Georgia, have a case? I think so. On the part one, we discussed the evidence that's publicly available, documenting everything that the lawsuit is complaining: discrimination, racism, racial discrimination, collusion, and defamation. Actually, all things that we have discussed on this podcast. So technically, he could use the series that I put together, Shedeur Sanders, since the NFL draft, the day of the draft, as well as up to today. I have documented everything that's available. There's more that I'm not aware of, but there's enough evidence to satisfy the complaint. Now, the question is the emotional distress. Yes, there's documented evidence of collusion, there's documented evidence of racism, there's documented evidence of defamation. Is there evidence of emotional distress? Now, I don't know this person, but honestly, I have evidence of my own emotional distress during the draft. In fact, I talked to a lawyer. That's right. And I shared how upset and distraught I was at being invited to watch the NFL draft, to watch one of our faves, Shedeur Sanders, who's a part of a family which is a cultural phenomenon, the Sanders family. And the NFL essentially invited all of us and lured Shedeur to the draft, knowing that they didn't want his kind before the draft. It's documented February 20th that the NFL didn't want his kind, but they kept inviting him to events, including the draft. So they essentially lured him to his own public humiliation. And it seems that that was the goal. Now, whether we come in as people that watch the draft that are fans of Shedeur's, see, Shedeur has fans because he's been famous since he was young. On the show with his father, Deion's Family Playbook, right? Then in high school, he was followed by a reality documentary, Overtime, following his high school career. Now, that's where I come in. I've been following Shedeur since high school, rooting for this young man, 3 state championships at a private school. They said he couldn't do it. It's a private school, so it was discounted, right? Then he goes to Jackson State. After a 12-year drought, Jackson State wins the SWAC championship, 2 Celebration Bowls. And it was also discounted because people were like, it's just HBCU football, which isn't highly competitive. So, who cares? And then he goes to a Power Five. And if you go back and you look at what people were saying at the time before Colorado played TCU in the predictions of who was going to win TCU versus Colorado, that people had TCU winning by 20 points. It was a close game, like 45-42. CU won, but this also was the game that HBCU kids did it after they said they couldn't do it. TCU had gone to the championship game, and Colorado just slayed a contender for the title. Shedeur put up 500 yards, thereby giving him the nickname Mr. 500. So there are people who are emotionally invested in Shedeur's journey, whether you're like myself, a podcaster, a fan, went to the games at Jackson State. It's documented, there's proof, there's receipts, there's pictures, there's videos, traveling, from Georgia to Mississippi, Atlanta to Jackson, Mississippi. That was the first time I had ever been to Jackson, Mississippi. And I'm from New Orleans. So I'm from New Orleans, never been to Jackson, Mississippi. And the only time I go is to see the kid I've been following since high school, Shedeur Sanders, play in this region. And it was wonderful. Then I went to the Celebration Bowl in Atlanta, which is actually the trip that actually helped me to decide I want to move to Atlanta. It's where I currently live. Then they went to the Celebration Bowl again. And there I was, cheering them on, documented, receipts, photos, videos. So people like myself are invested in this young man's journey emotionally, financially, not investing in him, but we got to spend money to get to these games. We buy the merch. I have Jackson State hoodies, socks, this, that, the other, t-shirts. I think the t-shirt I have the 2 on the front. Jackson State, right? Shedeur wore the 2. So he has fans. Shedeur has over 3 million followers on social media. So there are a lot of people who were emotionally invested in his journey from a young age. Some people watched while his family was on Deion's Family Playbook, and I didn't. So they have people that go back further than that. So there are people that watched when he was 4 or 5 on this show. Then they watched when he was in high school. Then they watched at Jackson State. Then they watched at Colorado. And then they watched the NFL draft. So imagine you're watching this kid at the age of 4 and 5. He's crying when he has to go to a new school because he doesn't know anybody. His dad, Coach Prime, the legendary Deion Sanders, is telling him, buddy, I got you. I'm not going to let anybody do anything to you. There are people that are invested that far back. But for people like myself who came along with overtime, watching Shedeur mature as a young man, watching him get his first truck. I'll never forget, he got like a Ford F-150, and in the headrest, he had the red interior with the 2 in the headrest. I never forgot it, and that was the film style for overtime. They always followed him when he was in his truck. So, you're invested in this kid, right? And then they go to Jackson State. You spend money. You go. You cheer these people on. You cheer on Shedeur. You get his jersey. You get his merch. You get Jackson State. All eyes on Jackson State. This kid is balling out, doing something that hadn't been done in 12 years. Just like he transformed his high school program, he helped to transform at the quarterback position Jackson State's football team. And then Travis Hunter enters the picture. And they become the dynamic duo. So we're not just invested in Shedeur Sanders. We also invested in Travis Hunter too, from Jackson State. We know that Shedeur and Travis balled out. If you go back, go to YouTube, you can look at the highlights from Jackson State's game from their time there. I just watched them not too long ago. They chronicled their journey at Jackson State, their daily journey, the practices, the meetings in Coach Prime's office, Shedeur and Travis and some of the other guys, but mostly Shedeur and Travis. And then they go to CU and the same thing happens. But what starts to happen at CU is they get torn apart. There's a wider audience, but what came with this wider audience was more personal bias. Oh, HBCU kids couldn't do it. But he became Mr. 500. First game, I think he threw for 512 yards. Then they go on to win 3-0. And then the sabotage starts. Then we watch this kid who we know is a baller because he high school, Jackson State. He's certified at this point. 3-0, he's certified in the Power 5. Because it's not like he doesn't have history. Just because people didn't want to see it doesn't mean he wasn't certified. They just chose to discount it. And after they went 3-0, we saw this kid take a beating and get sacked. And people called out the O-line, the offensive line, saying it was compromised, saying that there were people who were intentionally allowing Shedeur Sanders to get hurt. And we hated to see that. We've been watching this kid. Some of us since he was 6, 7, and 8. Some of us since he was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, Jackson State. He's 23 now. Get ready to make his mark on the NFL. So the first year, he was sacked 52 times, and we hated to see it. We have talked about it on podcasts and forums, how ugly and painful it was for Shedeur to take a beating like that. It was ugly. Some people reveled in it. The same people that have personal biases, saying an HBCU kid couldn't do it because they discount the HBCU programs. But they proved them wrong. Not that that was their goal, but that was a byproduct of it. And Shedeur and Travis and others from Jackson State always gave Jackson State the credit. Shedeur's nickname, Mr. 500, I used it all season long. But it seems like once he got the nickname Mr. 500, there was a concerted effort to make sure through sacks that he didn't get to honor his nickname. So we go into year 2. They end up better than 9-4, but there were moments where we could see that the O-line on the right side was lacking. Coach Prime said the lights were just too bright for some. There are others that also believe that there's some other things happening. So Shedeur ends up Mr. Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He wins the Johnny Unitas Award. He's a top 10 Heisman candidate. And we watched how the Heisman Committee tried to snub not just Shedeur. They also tried to snub Travis until they could not. But they did get away with snubbing Shedeur. But he did make the top 10. He didn't make the stage as the best quarterback, most accurate QB in college football. But he was a top 10 Heisman. And he and his brother from another mother, because Travis Hunter was referred to as the fourth Sanders son, shared a photo of them both holding the Heisman because Shedeur Sanders encouraged Travis to come play with them at Jackson State, and he did. And Travis took a lot of flack for that, but he didn't care. He was amongst family. He had become family with the Sanders. So when people saw Travis Hunter experience issues in his personal relationship, the same people that were invested in Travis Hunter, some from high school, many from Jackson State, many from Colorado, Jackson State and Colorado, were also aching to see him be so publicly disrespected by someone that he clearly was in love with, that he plans to marry in just a few weeks. We wish him well. So just like we saw public outcry and concern and support for Travis because people followed his journey and saw something that he didn't deserve, people were invested across the world because they knew who Travis was. They know he's vibrant, energetic, a sweetheart, young, innocent, inexperienced in love. And it's like he was being taken advantage of. He was being manipulated. And we didn't like to see it. Because at that point, we were invested, emotionally invested. Some financially invested. Travis's jersey, going to the Alamo Bowl, etc. I went to the Alamo Bowl. That's what fans do. Fans are emotionally invested. Whether it's the NFL, whether it's soccer, baseball, it doesn't matter. Fans are emotionally invested. You see what they call super fans. Some of the people, depending on the team, they're dressed like the mascot. They have paint on their faces. They tailgate. They spend money for the merch. They spend high dollars for premium seating to have fun, the beverages, the food, the tailgating experience before and after the game. These are fans. Fans are emotionally invested. And sometimes as fans, you have to detach yourself emotionally when you see like your favorite team just isn't interested in winning. You kind of take a step back. You stop cheering them on. You stop going to the games because you realize this is not a competition. It's a script. And winning is not the goal. So why should we emotionally invest our time, energy, effort, and resources financially, mentally, and time-wise for something that's not a true competitive sport, but more entertainment. It's being sold to us as competition. Come watch this team take on this team and see who the winner is. But if one team is built based on preference and not talent, and the other team is based on talent, then who you think is going to win? Scripted. People have alleged that professional sports in various areas is scripted. But then there are people diehards sitting in Green Bay in the snow, in the cold, in Chicago. These are people that are emotionally invested, and that's at the pro leagues. This also happens in college. Colorado fans making the journey to every game, home and away, is expensive. Following your favorite players, getting their autograph, cheering for them, hosting parties, buying plane tickets to go cheer on and support your favorite players in person. This is an emotional investment, a financial investment. So when the players get ready to make the journey from college football, such as Jalen Milroe, whom I followed, I wanted to see his journey from Alabama, where he had experienced what appeared to be some scapegoating. He was being scapegoated. There was a new change in coaches, and we want to see this young man succeed. So what do? We watched him as he prepares for the next level, the NFL draft. Same thing with Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, 16 players from Colorado. We all talked about it for weeks. We speculated what teams they will go to, when they will be drafted. And to be honest, as fans, we spent more time, I know on my podcast, What She Said Sports, talking about what teams that our faves are going to possibly be a part of, that are going to play some of our other faves. So, for instance, we're friends of Cam Ward. We follow Cam Ward's journey to the NFL in draft night as well. Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are essentially the same quarterback. But we watched as Shedeur Sanders be torn apart and Cam Ward at some point be ignored until draft night. We watched as the media tried to pit them against each other, choosing one over the other, trying to uplift one and tear down the other, until they realized, after seeing them work out at UNLV in Las Vegas together, that they're friends. So that was a failed attempt to try to degrade Shedeur Sanders in favor of Cam Ward. And here's the thing, they're both great. They're essentially the same quarterback. They have the same quarterback coach. How did that come about? Shedeur Sanders' quarterback coach, even the quarterback coach he had at Jackson State, became Cam Ward's quarterback coach. Cam Ward wanted to come out of college last year when he was at Washington State. Shedeur Sanders, no, wait, give it one more year, get your draft stock up. And it worked. It proved to be fruitful for Cam Ward, just like it proved to be fruitful for Travis Hunter, winning the Heisman, all at the urging of Shedeur Sanders. He's a great guy. He doesn't feel threatened by Cam. They had cute banter back and forth. Well, Shedeur didn't feel threatened at all. He didn't mind telling Cam, why don't you stay one more year? Instead of urging him to go on and move him out the way on the competition list, he wanted him to stay to get his draft stock up, and it worked because Cam Ward went first overall to the Tennessee Titans. He's already QB1 on their depth charts. So we'll be following at What She Said Sports, Cam's career in the NFL. And the first thing we did was to take a look to see what teams Tennessee played that Shedeur could be a part of. We speculated if Tennessee would play the Raiders, if Tennessee would play the Steelers, if Tennessee would play the Saints, if Tennessee would play Cleveland, because then we would get to see an NFL matchup of Shedeur Sanders, our fave, against Cam Ward, because we're friends of Cam Ward. We're already talking about if Shedeur had gone to Tennessee, that several of us from the What She Said podcast community would go down to Nashville and buy our Shedeur Sanders jerseys with the number 2 on it. In Nashville, we had fun. We're emotionally invested. So when it came time for Shedeur Sanders, for us to follow his career into the NFL, just like we followed Travis, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Will Howard, who won the Natty, Kyle McCord, who went to Syracuse, who we wanted Syracuse and Colorado to play in the Las Vegas Bowl. It didn't happen, but we hoped for it. We just didn't expect for the NFL to continue with the same intentional tearing down of Shedeur Sanders' character, blaming his success on what they call daddy ball. I heard somebody say Ryan Clark, who, is he's admirable in terms of his reporting, but he got it wrong. He said maybe Coach Prime overshot Shedeur Sanders' skills, and that's why he was pushed down in the draft to the 5th round, because he's just not that good. Something that the defamatory anonymous statements claim. And I said, Coach Prime never sold anybody on Shedeur Sanders' skill set. We watched him play. People act like he didn't have a career before Colorado. He was certified by the time he got to Colorado. And when they went 3-0, he was certified baller for defeating teams that people felt like would annihilate CU. That's where his nickname, Mr. 500, came from. With a clean pocket, Shedeur is Mr. 500. Easy. Maybe that's why he didn't have a decent O-line. And then when he's in the NFL, they want to use that against him and say he took too many sacks, the negative plays. That's why he's 5th, not even on the depth chart, which generally has four QBs. So we're seeing Cam Ward barely be talked about, only in conversations against Shedeur Sanders. And we're like, okay, Cam deserves his own shine. You don't have to negate Shedeur to talk about Cam. They're both good. And that's what we were saying. They're both good. So is there a connection? Can we claim emotional distress? Absolutely. We could have claimed emotional distress when we were heartbroken watching Shedeur Sanders be sacked unmercilessly in year 1 at CU while his O-line just let it happen. It's not because they weren't talented. They seemed to have an agenda. In year 2, it was only on the right side. During the Baylor game, Shedeur Sanders was sacked 8 times. And they still managed to pull off the win. He kept the team in it. He realized that the right side of the O-line had a weakness that was being exploited over and over and over. So his mobility is on full display when he rolls out the pocket to the left and in the rain throws a Hail Mary pass to LeJontay Wester, who is now with the Baltimore Ravens. Some people taking shots at Shedeur Sanders, the media, were unrelentless. I guess you could say were relentless in their quest to defame Shedeur, to devalue his draft stock. There was a lot of that taking place. And fans, we hated it. We talked about it on What She Said Sports multiple times, to the point we had to start tuning it out because we didn't like how they were targeting Shedeur Sanders. At this point, we're emotionally invested for over a decade, waiting for this young man to get the opportunity and emerge victorious after the team was sabotaged in year 1. When Colorado had a game against UCF, it was almost a perfect game. Shedeur looked great. So Coach Prime didn't sell us on anything. We watched Shedeur play. So for the media to say that, for Ryan Clark to say maybe Coach Prime oversold Shedeur's skill set, is to say that Shedeur doesn't have hours and hours of film. To say that they relied on what Coach Prime said rather than looked at his film is to assert that he doesn't have enough film to make an accurate assessment, which is false. The media had it in for Shedeur. Why? Because the media is the right hand of the NFL. The NFL practically owns the media. The media wants access to the players, and the NFL allows it even in the locker rooms, something the NFL Players Association has called out as being a primitive policy, which lacks decency and respect. Why does a reporter need to be in the locker room when the players are getting dressed? It's almost like they want to exert control and dehumanize the players. And they use the media to do it, not just in the locker room, but in the media's unfair targeting and denigration of different players. Shedeur Sanders was one of them. They either blamed his father, or they blamed him, or they tried to find some reason that just wouldn't hold up. But what they didn't clearly understand is that they didn't introduce us to Shedeur Sanders. We already knew who he was. So the negative commentary on Shedeur didn't stick. It didn't stick because he's already certified at 3-0 in year one. The Baylor game alone shows you that this is who you want leading your team. Somebody who's resilient in the face of being sacked 8 times, who realize that there's a weakness coming from the right side. So they roll out to the pocket, throw a Hail Mary, and because they're the most accurate QB in college football, the pass is completed and the game is tied and it goes into overtime. And then Travis Hunter does his thing as a playmaker. Shedeur and Travis's jerseys were retired as CU, and rightfully so, and people were upset about it, as if they didn't deserve it, but they did. Some media analysts said that Travis made Shedeur look good because he's a generational talent, without realizing that the entire elite wide receiver core is now in the NFL because they have a quarterback who's the most accurate passer in college football. So anything to degrade Shedeur Sanders' draft stock is what we had to endure as fans. We didn't like it. It was painful. It was heartbreaking. We prayed for him on the podcast, for him to have the strength to push past all of this negativity because it was an onslaught and he didn't deserve it. So yes, we were emotionally invested from a decade ago, from 5 years ago, from 3 years ago, from Jackson State, from CU. Shedeur has over 3 million followers. If they decide to go to one of his games, they might have a +1, whether it's in person or at home. And that could easily be 5.5 million people. He has 3 sponsorships in rotation: Delta Airlines, Ralph Lauren, and Nike. And it seems that it was reported that the NFL has concerns about Shedeur tweeting #BeLegendary, that he hasn't earned the right to be legendary. When in fact, that's just a manifestation that I want to be great. Shedeur wasn't chasing the NFL bag like many players were, and that's okay. He grew up wealthy. He was chasing greatness, just like his father. But they didn't point out the positives. They pointed out the negatives. Because why? His name is clickbait. You can actually hear one NFL reporter tell Shedeur at the Big 12 Combine, you know, we have to do this for clicks, right? In other words, we have to put you down and denigrate you for views. And he said, yeah, my dad taught me that's what comes with it. But see, that's not what comes with it for everybody. But that is what comes with it for Shedeur Sanders. People often say people hate Shedeur because of Coach Prime. That's not it. Some people don't want to see him as QB1. Some people are tired of seeing Black starting quarterbacks. Excuse me. Because why? They're taking over the starting QB roles. And when they started watching the NFL, there were no Black QBs. And decades later, they're seeing more and more Black QBs, not just as the majority of quarterbacks, But because they're so elite, they have ascended, with Shedeur Sanders being drafted in the first round, the number 2 pick to Cleveland, or the number 21 pick to Pittsburgh, or the number 9 pick to the Saints as QB1. 17 of 32, Shedeur Sanders would have been the majority, making Black QB1s the majority of starting quarterbacks. And that's historic for the NFL, especially after the NFL's documented ugly history of racism against Black NFL players and Black NFL quarterbacks, making their journeys tougher than everyone else's that's not Black. Basically saying that they don't have the ability to lead because their brains have lower cognitive functioning, which is basically asserting that Black people are inferior to whites. And this is something Shedeur Sanders and every other Black quarterback who aspired to play in the NFL has had to endure obstacles, either in college before getting to the NFL or getting to the NFL. And even though they're physically talented and highly skilled at the QB position, the NFL wants them to be a wide receiver. And when they say no, they go dead last in the draft. And the media tries to explain it as because they didn't run the 40-yard dash, even though they just won the Heisman. And they have hours and hours and hours of film of their speed. Anything to justify racism against Black QBs in the NFL draft. Often pushed down further to later rounds, because what does it do? It negates their money. It negatively affects their career earnings. So if Shedeur Sanders had gone to Cleveland at number 2, his contract would have been roughly $40 million, give or take a few. Then he maybe would have had a signing bonus of approximately $30 million. That's $70 million over the next 4 years. But because he was defamed, called entitled, cocky, his skill set negated, he played daddy ball, Coach Prime oversold his talent, he took too many sacks, even though it was obvious with the naked eye that he didn't have an O-line. Instead of saying he's tough, he's durable, the quarterback from Baylor is who you want leading your team, somebody that's resilient, that doesn't give up. When a team falls behind, he is poised, unflappable, in the face of defenders in his face, within consistently collapsed pocket. There were so many goods, but they only made up things. They fabricated. They used subjective commentary. He's going to go into a culture shock when he gets inside a real NFL locker room, as if he has never been inside a real NFL locker room. Shedeur Sanders is the most NFL rated QB. Technically should have gone number 1 off the board because he can handle the bright lights. It's been pointed out multiple times that some of the QBs that are praised failed miserably in the NFL. And not because they were sacked 67 times. That only seems to happen to the young Black starting quarterbacks, to humiliate them, to make their path harder. Because why? The NFL has an ugly documented history of racism against Black NFL players, asserting that their brains are inferior to whites. That goes for Shedeur Sanders too, right? That goes for Lamar Jackson. That goes for Michael Vick. That goes for Kyler Murray. That goes for Geno Smith. That goes for Russell Wilson. And yet somehow this small group of men who make up less than 25% of NFL quarterbacks, with Shedeur Sanders, would be the majority of Black quarterbacks. So is that why 2 lesser talented white QBs were taken to prevent Shedeur Sanders from becoming the majority? Is that why he was locked out of the first round? To ensure that he doesn't become a QB1? Because in the NFL, the philosophy is 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, and undrafted free agents, on and so forth, generally don't start, thereby making it harder for Shedeur Sanders, who's purely qualified and talented, to become a QB1. But because he was identified as number 17, his role was made harder. He was targeted. What people called narratives were very harmful and intentional defamatory statements designed to sully his character so no team would want him. They said he was entitled. A stereotype used against LeBron James, saying that LeBron James had a posse, which is a cultural stereotype. The modern version was used against Shedeur Sanders, that a head coach of one team who's never had a black starting quarterback, went through great lengths to defame Shedeur Sanders, said he had an entourage, when in fact he actually has social media camera crew because he has contracted television shows following and documenting his journey because he's the number one quarterback in college football. Fame comes with the number one quarterback in college football. That's what comes with it. Fame and money. Shedeur Sanders was sitting at the top of the NIL list, name, image, and likeness at $6 million, at over $6 million. So a young man who had to overcome severe doubt because his father was great, he's playing daddy ball, because he went to an HBCU or a private school, he can't get it done. It's not taken seriously. Because he went to CU and his dad was the coach, oh, he can't be coached by someone else, or, the program just isn't that good. There are actual anonymous statements on the record that were used the day of the draft, after they were negated, saying he's just not that good, when everything we see says that he is. It was not a coincidence Shedeur Sanders was projected to go in the first round. It was also not a coincidence, when you do research, that Shedeur Sanders was locked out of the first round only on draft day. Not the day before, draft day. 32 teams emerged not having a single grade on Shedeur Sanders after months of his character being intentionally defamed. He's entitled. He has an entourage. He has his hat on backwards. He's cocky, even though in a side-by-side photo with a white player with his hat on backwards, not one media personality referred to him as cocky. There was just crickets. So they were asserting a duality within the NFL, similar to Jim Crow, that when a white player wears his hat backwards, he has swagger. But when Shedeur has swagger, he's cocky. This was an ugly, grotesque, premeditated, manufactured, intentionally orchestrated assault to defame Shedeur Sanders' character and discriminate against him as a QB, all to make sure that he does not become the number 17th QB1 starting quarterback, because then Black American quarterbacks in the NFL, despite the challenges and hurdles and discrimination that they faced, will become the majority. Against all odds. Against all odds. And because of the rankings of the QBs in the draft by numerous media personalities, with Shedeur going second to Cleveland or the Giants, it didn't matter. The top three teams all needed quarterbacks. But of the three, only one has never had a Black starting quarterback. So even though the media insisted that Shedeur was going to the Giants, on the What She Said podcast, we're like, that's never going to happen. If they've never had a Black starting quarterback, from the inception of the NFL, they do not want a Black starting quarterback. They've had Black quarterbacks, yes, but they've never played the majority of the games. In fact, one Black quarterback had his ribs broken. All the while, this same team held on to a white quarterback who ended up with a 25-45-1 record. And even though it cost the team and fans turmoil, because they went on to lose and lose and lose and lose, and they fumbled elite talent who was Black, while they coddled lesser talented that cost the team millions and billions of dollars. And fans just had to suffer emotionally season after season after season, because this one particular team who defamed Shedeur Sanders preferred to have a white quarterback, even though he was not that talented. He was protected through contract after contract. Even given another opportunity to prove himself after he proved himself to be not talented enough to win, which is technically the goal. But it seems like the goal began to change in effort to protect white quarterbacks and keep them in the league so that black QB1s don't become the majority. So with Shedeur Sanders collateral damage, meaning if Jalen Milroe were projected to be number 2, would he have suffered the same fate if the story would have worked? Shedeur Sanders and his father were picked apart, blamed for things that legends like Archie Manning has done, protect his son, get him to a good team. Coach Prime called out when Shedeur was 16. Coach Prime put out a tweet that was saying, while he likes what the Cleveland Browns are doing, that young QBs should not go to Cleveland because it could harm their careers. And he was right, because here we are in 2025, and Cleveland is a revolving door for QBs. They have had 40 quarterbacks that have taken snaps in 25 years, 40. And Coach Prime was dragged through the mud as if he had said that last week. They intentionally posted a tweet from when Shedeur was 16 and in high school and made it appear as if Coach Prime was saying something about the current GM or the current coach. No. And he was actually giving constructive criticism because he highlighted the good. While I like what the Browns are doing when it comes to the quarterback position, young QBs should not go there. And maybe they should pull a Eli Manning, which pointed out that Archie Manning, who's considered a legend, orchestrated where his son, who's a quarterback, Eli Manning, would go. And he did. And it worked. So when Coach Prime's son, Shedeur Sanders, gets here, and there are a few teams that are consistently bad, poorly mismanaged, fumbling excellent elite talent, he wants to make sure, because his son has emerged as the best QB in the draft, the best QB in college football, the most accurate passer in college football, he wants to make sure that of the top 3 needy quarterback teams, that his son doesn't go to a team like Eli Manning didn't do, that is unstable, that could hurt his career. So he wanted the same for his son, Shedeur Sanders, that Archie Manning wanted for his son, Eli Manning. There were people back then when Eli Manning was picked and refused to go to the Chargers that blamed the Chargers. Why would you even pick him if he doesn't want to go there? Shedeur Sanders never said he didn't want to go to a particular team. He said he wanted to go to a team where they wanted to change the culture. Because why? He's a transformative quarterback. Some people in the NFL took that offensively. Why? Because they think less of black quarterbacks. So how dare you try to say that you're going to change anything? Remember, these people have a history of practices and policies doing what? Asserting that blacks are inferior to whites. So we expect you to be submissive. So if I expect you to be submissive because you're not fit to lead, how dare you say with your hat turned backwards that you want to go to a team that you can change? You really think we're going to let you change one of our teams? The NFL has teams that should be held accountable. The unethical practices require oversight. The intentional, premeditated campaign to defame Shedeur Sanders, all to preserve the racial hierarchy, keeping Shedeur from becoming the 17th of 32 black starting quarterbacks, demands that the NFL has ethical oversight. It cannot be trusted with the careers of young black quarterbacks. If they get drafted at the number 1 spot, they end up like Caleb Williams, sacked the most in the NFL 66 times, and now they need to fix the Heisman winner, generational talent. Can you imagine a team like Jacksonville saying that they need to fix Travis Hunter, generational talent? That's absurd. But at quarterback, generational talent gets overlooked once you make the team. Because I never wanted you here and you still made it. So I'm going to make your life hell and allow you to be sacked the most because it makes you look incompetent, which is what I have asserted all along, that you are less than. You are not fit to lead. So I'm not going to make it easy for you. But when it comes to white quarterbacks like Bo Nix, he gets to struggle and is praised for making it through. Caleb Williams has to be fixed. Bryce Young also won the Heisman, was sacked somewhere between 60 and 91 times. He was blamed because his girlfriend left him for somebody in the NBA. His personal character was attacked. Instead of the team being a competent O-line. And it's always the O-line. See, I already had a theory. It's documented. I said, I noticed a pattern here. That these young black starting quarterbacks, something they never wanted these young guys to be, get sacked excessively. And that seems to be another way to humiliate them and take them down a notch. Yeah, you won the Heisman in college, but we're not going to let you win here. See, that was an era when the dual threat quarterback came along. That at some point, NFL teams wanted the dual threat quarterback, but then there were a few that don't. Like the New York Giants have never had a black starting quarterback. So clearly they didn't care about the dual threat quarterback evolution of the quarterback position and wanting to partake into the winning. They didn't want a black starting quarterback, so they didn't care about the dual threat. So with teams with that type of attitude, the dual threat became a curse for Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson. So Shedeur Sanders is actually not a dual threat quarterback. So where does he fit in? Well, after the Super Bowl, where we could see Shedeur Sanders in rooms with owners, having casual conversations, an NFL insider is reported to have discussed with Mel Kiper Jr. on or about February 20th, a week before the combine, that Shedeur Sanders is not the quarterback that NFL is looking for right now. He's not the kind of quarterback. He's not the type of quarterback. So the NFL is not looking for quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. The emphasis on time. Why now? And what kind of quarterback is Shedeur Sanders? So Mel Kiper Jr. went on to discuss that Shedeur Sanders is not a dual threat quarterback, the running around guys, that he's actually a pocket passer. Something that is now considered to be less desirable, a retro style pocket passer. So if I label him a retro style pocket passer, it's justifiable that he will fall down to later rounds and make less money because we want the running around guys. We want the Lamar Jacksons. We want the Deshaun Watsons, the Michael Vicks. We want the dual threats. Do you? Because they all have been discriminated against or sacked excessively or pushed down to later rounds like Jalen Hurts and demeaned even after going to the Super Bowl. And if Shedeur Sanders was a retro style pocket passer and you can justify pushing him down in the later round, why was Jackson Dart drafted in the first round? Because he's a white pocket passer and that is acceptable, but a black pocket passer is not? Why was Tyler Shook taken before Jalen Milroe, who has already been compared to Lamar Jackson at his pro day in Alabama? And when he ran an exceptional 4.37 speed, because they want the running around guys, the dual threat quarterback, why didn't Jalen Milroe go number 3 to the Giants? Why did Jalen Milroe not go to the Saints? The first mock draft was done. He was the number 40th pick to the Saints. It's documented. Why did he get pushed so far down to number 94? Because we know the later rounds you go, you're less likely to start. Therefore, Cam Ward with the number 1 pick overall in the NFL draft becomes the 16th, making black and white quarterbacks half and half at starter QB1. Shedeur Sanders, number 17, to the Cleveland Browns, who met with him extensively, and he seemed to be their guy until there was an about face, a very suspicious about face. Shedeur Sanders being the second pick overall in the 2025 draft to the Cleveland Browns would make him number 17 of 32, securing the majority for black starting quarterbacks known as QB1s, which is historic for the NFL, knowing that there's a documented, ugly, grotesque history of racism against black NFL players and black quarterbacks in the NFL draft. So then what about Jalen Milroe? He would have been number 18. So Shedeur Sanders being number 17 would have secured the majority. Jalen Milroe coming in number 3 to the Giants would have been number 18, partially cementing. And there's no coming back from that because next year's class will undoubtedly also have 3 quarterbacks in the top 10 because the class of 2024 did. So there's history being made all over here. And there was a concerted effort, collusion, to stop history from being made. And in some ways, with Shedeur Sanders being slandered, defamed, assaulted, publicly humiliated, all used to justify not selecting him in the first round. NFL QB starting right now, rest at half and half. Mission accomplished until the season starts. And this is where I say the NFL typically is short-sighted. There seems to be strategic efforts to stop certain things or to cause people pain and humiliation without thinking it through. Deshaun Watson asked for a trade as a black quarterback and a dual threat curse. How dare you, because I think less of you, think you have any type of leverage to ask me for a trade. He didn't just get up and leave. He asked for a trade. And then something that I guess they didn't think through. They tried to highlight that behind the scenes, he was not conducting himself appropriately. He ended up with 24 cases of misconduct. But then he also ended up with a guaranteed contract, a fully guaranteed veteran contract, the only fully guaranteed veteran contract in NFL history for $230 million. Now, how does one get accused of sexual misconduct and settle 22 civil cases for it and end up with $230 million, a pay increase? He went from $10 million a year to $46 million a year, and he got the trade. So were there people who colluded to embarrass him because he had the audacity to ask for a trade? And then the NFL found out that we were trying to embarrass you, but we end up about to getting ready to embarrass a whole lot of people. That's how we got $230 million. We shall see. Then Shedeur Sanders in this draft documented 220. The NFL is not looking for quarterbacks like Shedeur. Why did you invite him to the combine? Did you want to exploit him for views? Or did you want to reel him in so you could embarrass him on draft day? Because had you disinvited him, one, you wouldn't have the views you have had. You kept us all on the end of our seats emotionally invested after you lured us to watch this draft. 7 million people tuned in to see where the most popular quarterback in the NFL draft, Shedeur Sanders, would go. So the NFL had our attention. We were all emotionally invested. So while there's one person that has filed an emotional distress lawsuit alleging collusion, racism, and defamation, this could technically be a class action lawsuit for about $1 billion. I'm documented on camera, visibly upset that my supporters at What She Said Sports are asking me if I'm okay. I had to step away and not even go live on my typical schedule the next day after the draft because I was so upset at witnessing somebody that we all love, because everybody loves Shedeur, be intentionally and publicly humiliated in front of 7 million people. And they lured him to it because they already documented that they didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders. but because they wanted him for views and wanted him there, because he had the audacity to wear his hat backwards, because he had the audacity to suggest that he wanted to go to a team and take on the challenge of turning the team from a losing team into a winning team, that he wanted to change the culture, something he's done at his high school, Jackson State and Colorado. But this is the NFL. And as a black quarterback, you're not supposed to believe in yourself. Boomer Esiason, who's supposed to be a legend in the NFL, went on the record stating that the owners colluded against Shedeur Sanders to take him off the board. And they didn't tell him. Just like they knew before the combine that they didn't want quarterbacks like him, but they didn't disinvite him and say, hey, Shedeur, you know what? We're going to go in a different direction. No, they kept reeling him in. So much so that the Cleveland Browns met with him extensively. That it was on the record by an insider, Matt Shedeur, that their strategy in Cleveland, after having a revolving door of 40 starting QBs in 25 years, was going to go for a quarterback at the number 2 spot. They met extensively with Shedeur all the way through CU's Pro Day. Ain't Too Hard to Find showcase on April 4th. So it's on the record they're going to get a quarterback. It's on the record they're meeting with Shedeur extensively. Looks like Shedeur's going to the Browns. Nobody who understands the history of the New York Giants believed that Shedeur was going to the New York Giants because they have never had a black QB1. Cleveland has, they in fact have Deshaun Watson. So moving right along till March 31st, there's this announcement to the media, something that could have been discussed privately, but it seems like it was to embarrass the GM for being hired in 2022. And seemingly his first major task was to give Deshaun Watson a $230 million guaranteed contract that was clearly approved by the league and the organization. But he's the scapegoat for that contract, and they had just hired him. So people being made a scapegoat is not new. In fact, we watched the Atlanta Falcons be made a scapegoat by the NFL itself after it shared Shedeur Sanders' phone number with 2,000 people who did not need to know, with a waiver wire attached in the email body, an attachment. Making fun of Shedeur like they've done other quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, putting them down, mocking them. Yes, we're paying you $40 million, but we don't think much of you. We're sharing around your personal data, your mental aptitude test, and Shedeur, you sent us your phone number, but you're going to be cut. He sent us his phone number, but he's going to be cut. There was no reason for 2,000 people to get Shedeur Sanders' phone number. The NFL has not publicly announced that he has been fined for this egregious act. But instead, it scapegoated the Atlanta Falcons organization, and it lied and said that only a few people had Shedeur's number, and that it came from an iPad of one of its executives that was not properly secured. So they fined that executive too, and they blamed that executive's son for unauthorized access to that Atlanta Falcons issued device. But now all of that's being questioned because 2,000 people had an email delivered to them with a waiver wire attached, making fun of Shedeur Sanders, sending his phone number. We don't need it because you're going to be cut. And only one person made a prank call with that phone number. And he has a connection to Ole Miss and the New York Giants and other NFL executives. Because on the day of the draft, the son of the NFL executive who allegedly accessed Shedeur Sanders' phone number on his father's unprotected Atlanta Falcons issued iPad supposedly gave that number to the prank caller we see in all of the videos wearing the Ole Miss sweatshirt. The Ole Miss sweatshirt to the New York Giants was confirmed in multiple ways. The New York Giants and Ole Miss at the QB position when it comes to football have a pipeline. The legend Archie Manning played for the Giants, went to Ole Miss. His son Eli Manning played for the Giants, went to Ole Miss. And now Jackson Dart. So once again, the New York Giants get a quarterback. At some point, he'll start. They say he's going to be buried on the depth chart. We shall see. They announced Russell Wilson is supposed to be their starter. This will be a first for them because Russell Wilson is black. And the New York Giants have what? Never had a black QB1. And it should also be noted that Shedeur Sanders' phone number fell into hands of this Ole Miss connection to the New York Giants or NFL executives. How convenient. So a prank was carried out on television, perfectly timed with inside information. There was no way you could execute this prank as a random. You had to know that Shedeur Sanders was not going to the New Orleans Saints because the Ole Miss sweatshirt prankster clearly has relations, connections to NFL executives who knew that Shedeur Sanders was not going to the New Orleans Saints. And this young man had this information, and he used it to record himself calling Shedeur up as the Saints were on the clock to pick, because each team gets 5 or 10 minutes to pick. So while the Saints were mulling it over, what they were going to say out loud, because they already knew they were not taking Shedeur. They were taking a lesser known, lesser talented QB that was not Shedeur Sanders or Jalen Milroe. Pocket passer or dual threat, pick one. They took somebody named Tyler Shook. The fan base is distraught themselves. Why? Because fans are emotionally connected, and they were so excited about the possibility of Shedeur Sanders, who's a transformational QB, potential to get them to the Super Bowl finally and get away from the persistent losing seasons. They want to get back to greatness that they had, I think, in 2009. And they thought they were going to get it because they saw where Derek Carr, who was QB1 at the time, was supposedly going to be injured and out for the rest of the season, therefore paving the way for Shedeur. But apparently the owners and the GM had otherwise. And the Ole Miss sweatshirt prankster impersonated the GM of the Saints. And while the Saints were on the clock getting ready to make their announcement on who they were going to draft, the prankster took the time to call, perfectly timed. Hi, this is Mickey Loomis from the New Orleans Saints. Shedeur's outside waiting with his family. He can't really hear because you can hear a lot of noise in the background. He's trying to move to a place that's more quieter. And the guy says, hey, buddy, we're going to take you off the board. Something that they say all the time. Anybody can figure that part out. But not anybody will be able to tell Shedeur, oh, you're going to have to wait a little longer, buddy. And then we hear the announcement that the Saints picked Tyler Shook. Perfectly timed, inside information. Ole Miss sweatshirt pranks caller has access and connections to NFL executives. So if the NFL itself, instead of the Atlanta Falcons that is scapegoated, actually gave out Shedeur Sanders information to 2,000 people, which is all 32 teams, but only one person lifted Shedeur Sanders information. And only one person made the prank call, and that person is connected to NFL executives and the New York Giants. And to this day, Ole Miss sweatshirt prank caller has not been identified. But instead, the son of the defensive coordinator has been thrown under the bus as being the actual prank caller, even though we see Ole Miss sweatshirt guy. So why is there such a concerted effort to protect the identity of the Ole Miss sweatshirt prank caller? Which executive in particular is he connected to? Which NFL executive? And why is it okay to allow people to believe that the defensive coordinator's son made the call, that the Atlanta Falcons breached the data, and that only a few people saw it when that's not the case? It's a cover-up. So if everybody that was being drafted, people wanted to come back and say, oh, a few other people were pranked. No one else was humiliated in front of 7 million people and called by anyone associated with the NFL with inside information as the pick was being executed. Just Shedeur Sanders. So none of it is a coincidence. Not the NFL leaking Shedeur Sanders information, not the NFL not being fined, not the Ole Miss prank caller not being identified. There's protection here at every level, but no protection for Shedeur Sanders. Even after the draft, the New York Giants continuously tried to, as they began to back away from their defamatory statements, start saying that we didn't get him because he failed his interviews. And his own mother, Shedeur Sanders' mother, said, where's the proof? Now they're backing away from the statements about the interviews. So these were all lies. They went through a lot of trouble to tell lies, to publicly humiliate Shedeur, to reel him in with the Cleveland Browns, to give him false hope that he would be drafted so he could have a draft party, so we could watch him be on the clock and they could interview him and he could be a part of it and they could get our views, all to do what? Prank call him and not draft him round after round after round until the president of the United States and the prank caller went viral. At that point, the NFL knew it was exposed because the NFL knew it sent out Shedeur's information, its phone number. The NFL knows exactly who the Ole Miss sweatshirt guy is, the prank caller. The NFL knows that the prank caller is actually not the defensive coordinator's son. And if we see that the NFL lied and covered up and tried to scapegoat the Atlanta Falcons, are they truly scapegoating the defensive coordinator? Did the defensive coordinator have anything to do with it? Did Shedeur's number really come from his laptop? Did his son really get it? Or did someone in the New York Giants organization give the Ole Miss prank caller, which the New York Giants have a pipeline from and a connection to, and drafted Jackson Dart from Ole Miss? Did they directly give the prank caller Shedeur Sanders' phone number and provide the name of the Saints GM, Shedeur Sanders' name, and write down for him from the script that he was reading what he was supposed to say and when he was supposed to say it? Because everything that was used in the so-called prank, which was intentional humiliation to embarrass Shedeur Sanders, was inside information. A cover-up is underway. Cleveland is also guilty. If Cleveland's owner could come out on March 31st, a month before the draft and a month after the combine, and go on the record through the media and say, after they have had extensive meetings with Shedeur Sanders, and the media has reported that they're going to get a quarterback, and it looks like it's Shedeur Sanders. And then all of a sudden, the GM remembers, we took a big swing and we missed with Deshaun Watson. So Shedeur Sanders has to pay for that. So let's fix that first. So instead of getting an elite QB, they went to a cheaper option in a lower round. So when did they tell Shedeur Sanders that they were going to go in a different direction? They didn't. They kept meeting with him even after the GM said what? We took a big swing with Deshaun Watson, which means we're not spending this money. We're not spending $70 million on another QB. We just gave Deshaun Watson $230 million. But what does that have to do with Shedeur Sanders or the GM? Because he was newly hired at the time. So it seems that the GM and Shedeur Sanders were both scapegoated, were both set up. But the GM dug a hole for himself by trying to say that it was justified for Shedeur Sanders to be pushed down to outside the draft until the president of the United States and CNN posted the prank humiliation call to Shedeur Sanders, and the NFL knew the connection that he's just not that good. So we got him for cheap, which is a lie. Yes, you got him for cheap, but he's damn good. So did the Cleveland Browns know all along, since the NFL insider told Mel Kiper Jr. before the combine, before the extensive meetings with Shedeur Sanders, that we don't want quarterbacks like Shedeur? If that's the case, And the owner is a part of that conversation because the NFL insider said it. So clearly the owners that's the move that they're making. And we saw them do what? Carry out that move. They took him off the board. That means the owners of the Browns knew that he was not to draft Shedeur Sanders because the NFL did not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders. So why did Cleveland allow its GM to meet with Shedeur Sanders extensively? The same reason it allowed its brand new GM to give Deshaun Watson a $230 million fully guaranteed contract after he settled 22 civil lawsuits for misconduct. So who's being set up here? Because it's clear that the NFL knew it didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders because it went on the record. When they say NFL insider, they know exactly who they're talking about. Mel Kiper Jr. knows exactly who told him that because he went on and did a full commentary about why pocket passes are good for the league. Was the NFL really talking about Shedeur Sanders' skill set when they said they didn't want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now? Emphasis on the time. It's not a good time for elite black quarterbacks right now in the first round. Why is that? Because blacks will become the majority of starting quarterbacks. It clearly wasn't about his skill set because if they didn't want a pocket passer, they would have never drafted Jackson Dart. They would have never paid Josh Allen $330 million to clean up his dual threat game and become more of a pocket passer. They would have drafted Jalen Milroe because he's a dual threat compared to Lamar Jackson's elite talent and a 4.37. But they didn't do that either. So that means it wasn't about dual threat or pocket passer. So when the NFL insider told Mel Kiper Jr., the NFL does not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders, emphasis now, had nothing to do with skill set. Did it have everything to do with the concerted effort to make sure Shedeur Sanders was not the 17th black QB1, thereby giving black starting quarterbacks, QB1s, the majority, despite the obstacles they faced to get to this point, despite not being the majority of QBs. That's amazing. It's almost a miracle. So, yes, there's evidence documented of racism, collusion, defamation, all where Shedeur Sanders and other veteran and QBs in the draft who are black are concerned. Is there a casual connection between the NFL and the complaint? Absolutely. We're fans. The NFL lured us to watch the draft, made sure we stayed put. See, people thought it was a prank. Oh, this is just marketing by the NFL to get our views because they know everybody wanted to watch Shedeur get drafted. So people believe that the NFL intentionally pushed Shedeur down to the later rounds so we could all sit and watch all 3 days. I said, well, why didn't they give him his money? Because they robbed him in broad daylight of $70 million. Shedeur will likely make no more than $4 or $5 million over the next 4 years. That's highway robbery. So that's why the $100 million lawsuit is justifiable. Actually, Shedeur Sanders and other black quarterbacks have their own class action lawsuit that they could file for racial discrimination, defamation, and collusion. But these are fans. And fans are proven to be emotionally attached to these teams. It's not a foreign concept. The NFL lured fans using Shedeur Sanders, who they could have disinvited from the combine, to come watch Shedeur Sanders get drafted, which meant, AKA, get publicly humiliated because the plot was hatched before the draft. When the NFL sent out Shedeur Sanders' phone number to 2,000 people who did not need to know, lied and covered it up, and it ended up in the hands of someone from the New York Giants organization, NFL executives, Ole Miss connection, when the Giants have never had a black starting quarterback. So why would the Ole Miss connection want to humiliate Shedeur Sanders? Because Jackson Dart was their guy. And they wanted to rub it in Shedeur Sanders' face that Jackson Dart was going to be the second QB off the board, even though he's lesser talented, because they can do what they want, and that's who they wanted. Jackson Dart was their guy. So why did Shedeur Sanders have to be defamed? Because the New York Giants needed to justify picking a lesser talented QB. That means the NFL draft is not about talent. That's huge. That means the New York Giants are not building to win. That's huge. So I have to make Shedeur take the fall. The GM's job is on the clock. So I have to justify why I didn't get the second best QB in the draft. He's not good. He's cocky. He's arrogant. He has an entourage. He's going to go into culture shock when he goes into a real NFL locker room because he called some of the plays at CU. Because nobody cares who your daddy is. All these things are documented. As frivolous and flimsy as they are, these were the things, including the word entitled, which was lifted by the owners because Boomer Esiason told us that the owners said, take him off the board. We don't want this entitled. Now, it was proven false, a lot of these statements, but the NFL owners chose to go with it. But these are the same owners that an NFL insider communicated to Mel Kiper Jr. that they didn't want a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. So what proof do they have that Shedeur Sanders is entitled? Is that what they meant when they said they don't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders? They don't want entitled quarterbacks. So why did you invite him to the draft at all? Why did you invite him to the combine? Why didn't you pull him aside when you called him cocky and said his hat was backwards and say, hey, we want to go in a different direction? Because you wanted to use him for views, so you wanted to exploit him. And then you wanted to reel him in so he'd be available on draft day so you could publicly humiliate him because, like Deshaun Watson, how dare you have the audacity as a Black quarterback, a Black player who we think has lower cognitive function, to have any type of power or control and choice in this league? When we look at you as less than, this is our league. You just make us money. The NFL seems to want its Black NFL players and quarterbacks, the leaders of the team, to be submissive because the NFL itself, through policies and practices and discrimination and collusion and defamation, has asserted that it's okay for their Black quarterbacks to be mocked, excessively sacked, pushed down, defamed, make less money, ostracized, colluded against, made the butt of jokes in front of 2,000 people that work for the NFL who did not need to know any of this. So while the NFL settled a $1 billion lawsuit, supposedly to stop race norming, because that's what it's called when you assert that Black NFL players have lower cognitive functioning than white NFL players, thereby asserting that Black people in general are inferior to white people, which is why they took great offense that a young Black man could say, draft me if you want to make change, if you want to change the culture. What they heard was, so he think he has choices? You ought to come in and do as you were told. When other QBs who are white are given privileges, they're the face, they're the leader. But Shedeur Sanders is to come in and be submissive, sit down, shut up, and dribble. Be seen to make money and not heard and live out loud. So Shedeur Sanders is not the problem. The NFL is. And yes, fans are emotionally connected and were distraught to see someone they have some been watching since he was 6 or 7 years old, or in high school, or college at Jackson State, or college at Colorado, lured to sit down for 3 days and wait and lean in and watch where he's going to be drafted, only to be humiliated. and colluded against, as the owners took him off the board and didn't even tell him, hey, we want to go in a different direction. But instead, he got a phone call with inside information that only NFL executives should have, that he's going to go to the New Orleans Saints, but the caller says, oh, wait, you're going to have to wait a little longer, buddy. It was to embarrass him, humiliate him. You think we're going to choose you, but we're not. We were never going to draft you. It's documented. The NFL did not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders. Black or entitled, you choose. All right, let's see who's in the comments here. Quite a few of us, so let's talk about it because I want to get y'all's thoughts on the case for emotional distress. What did you experience? I was live at the time. I was upset because I realized instantly that the reason why the media and the NFL were defaming Shedeur Sanders was so that they could justify drafting a lesser talented quarterback who was white, their guy. Even though they knew he wasn't talented, they didn't care. They just didn't want it to be a black quarterback. It's not that Shedeur is entitled. It's that he's blacks and blacks will become the majority of the starters. There are a lot of entitled players in the NFL, but they're in the NFL. They didn't get ostracized and mocked and humiliated. So it says, good evening from California. How you doing? Sleep. Yep, get you some sleep. Los Angeles here. Hey, how you doing? Good evening, Tracy from California. I was very distressed with the draft. Absolutely. That's why it should really be a class action lawsuit. You know, it should really be a class action lawsuit because, you know, we were lured to this draft. They knew Shedeur was the most popular player. They know they didn't want players like Shedeur, but they wanted to use him for the views, and they did get 7 million views. And they took the opportunity to plot, to humiliate and embarrass him, knowing that they were never going to draft him because they knew even before the combine, they didn't want quarterbacks like him now, which explains why they took 2 lesser talented white quarterbacks. They could have took Jalen Milroe. They didn't have to take Shedeur. They could have took Jalen Milroe and somebody else. I don't know. But the top 3 QBs were black. And they didn't want those guys because they didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. So $100 million is really not enough. It should be a class action lawsuit for $1 billion. The evidence is there: defamation, racism, and collusion. And the connection, the casual connection to fans, the NFL, Shedeur Sanders is there. It's not a foreign concept that fans are emotionally connected to their teams. That's what they want us to be. They work hard to make sure we're emotionally connected so we can buy the merch, we can go to the games, we can spend thousands of dollars to go to the Super Bowl or sit at the 50-yard line or buy jackets and shoes and purses so that we'll watch every Sunday. So we'll get together, go tailgate, spend thousands of dollars to have our trucks painted with their logos and this, that, and the other. That's what they want us to do, be emotionally connected to the teams. In college, we get emotionally connected to the players. In the NFL, we follow them from college. And we are now emotionally connected to the players and the teams. So we're 100% 10 toes in. They wanted us all to watch the draft because they knew Shedeur was the most popular, and we did stay for 3 days only to see him be humiliated, and it was disgusting. I was so upset. I I didn't even go live the next day. I told my supporters, I got to take a break. This is painful. It was painful to see him being lured to the center with false hopes that he would get drafted at all. And they weren't going to draft him at all. That's what people haven't made the connection to. When the owner said, take him off the ball and off the board, and he went into a free fall, after the prank went viral and after President Trump came in and referred to the NFL as stupid, maybe legal reached out and said, hey, y'all gonna have to draft him. Everybody knew he wasn't to be drafted. Travis even alludes that he knew where he was going the night before because he was already looking at houses in Jacksonville. Cam Ward shared that he knew he accidentally leaked the few days before draft week. He knew he was going to Tennessee. I watched an interview with Shedeur on Max Crosby's podcast, who was with the Raiders, who said he was shocked when they selected Ashton Jeanty because Tom Brady is Shedeur Sanders' mentor. How does he not end up in the Raiders organization? The same way he didn't end up in Cleveland after they met with him extensively. And it explains why they started secretly meeting with Dylan Gabriel, because they didn't want Shedeur to become aware that he wasn't going to Cleveland. So they lured him to his public humiliation. They colluded to lure him there. They lured us there, his fans and fans of the NFL who wanted to see who this new guy was that was the most popular player in the NFL draft. This was all orchestrated. Sloppily, but it was orchestrated. The prank was not a coincidence. The timing was not a coincidence. That his number was sent out to 2,000 people was not a coincidence. That someone with connections to NFL executives and the New York Giants from the Ole Miss pipeline, to not a coincidence. Not a coincidence at all. They knew before the combine that they didn't want players like Shedeur. They lured him there so he could be humiliated, so they could show him who's boss, that he doesn't get to choose if he wants to transform a team or not. Because the New York Giants showed us they weren't building a winning team. Their selection of QB was not about talent. It was about preference. And Shedeur Sanders is not their preference. Apparently, neither is Jalen Milroe or Dylan Gabriel. All people of color. This was disgusting. It was sickening. We talked about it every day since the draft. I had to take one day off. One of the supporters of the podcast was like, "Where were you? I was looking for you." I'm consistent. I go live every day. I couldn't do it. I had to take a mental break. I was distraught that they would treat him this way intentionally. This was no accident. And all to justify taking your preference, that's between you and your fan base. If you'd rather choose who you prefer rather than choose who you could win with. They never had a black starting quarterback, so I never thought Shedeur was going there. But Cleveland, it was all a setup. If the owner could say on March 31st, we took a big swing and we missed with Deshaun Watson, so we need to unbury ourselves from that hole. He knew it before the combine. But he allowed his GM to believe that they were drafting Shedeur unless his GM deserves an Oscar for being used twice. But they definitely let Shedeur Sanders know all the way to April 4th and afterwards, after CU's pro day, that they were interested in him. When they were secretly meeting with Dylan Gabriel, so they knew they were going to cut ties with Shedeur. And the GM, Andrew Berry, his price was too expensive relative to the draft. His price never changed after college. The Cleveland Browns, who ended up being forced to take Shedeur Sanders. People are still trying to figure out what forced them to do it. Was it President Trump showing up, calling him stupid for not drafting him? Because he's a phenomenal athlete with phenomenal genes? In other words, the owners didn't care about the money they could make, which is what most people care about when they're running a business, revenue. It was more important for the owners to collude against Shedeur and show that entitled that they don't want him, when they knew the entitled was a farce. There was nothing to prove that Shedeur was entitled. This was all orchestrated to keep Shedeur from becoming QB1, the number 17th QB1. It's evidence that the Cleveland Browns knew before they even met with Shedeur once that they were buried under Deshaun Watson's contract. It was talked about extensively. How they gonna get a quarterback? I talked about it on my podcast. I said, well, they say they got insurance money because the Deshaun Watson injury is covered, and they're gonna use that to get a quarterback. So why didn't they? They chose to give the money to what? A defensive tackle? So yes, there's evidence to prove racism, collusion, and defamation. And there's also evidence of a casual connection between the NFL, Shedeur Sanders fans, and the NFL draft. This should be a class action lawsuit for, at minimum, $1 billion, because we were all lured to watch him be publicly humiliated. And they knew they weren't going to draft him. So they set out to harm him emotionally. Because they said, with no evidence, that he's entitled. But when in fact, that's just something to say to hide the truth that they didn't want Shedeur Sanders to become the 17th Black starting quarterback, giving Black starting quarterbacks the majority. That's what it was about. Yes, a nice little live for the West Side. Great. Let's see. Thank you. I'm still watching old Buffs games like it was Martin reruns, and I couldn't stand college football. Right? There's a lot of people who say that. I know I haven't watched college football ever. Shedeur Sanders was the draw. Colorado was the draw. So we wanted to follow these guys into the league. It's not a foreign phenomenon at all. That's what the league wants us to do. They spend millions of dollars to ensure that we become emotionally attached. So you can't back away from it now because you lured your fans to the draft. You lured Shedeur fans to the draft. You used Shedeur knowing you didn't want somebody like him on February 20th. So for views, so you exploited him. So yeah, $1 billion plus. This should be a class action lawsuit. I'm on video being tried. I'm live at the time, so I have evidence. I have evidence, and I have comments. People asking me if I'm okay. I'm documented live saying I have to take a step away. This is painful. I'm upset. Yes, distraught. So I too can file a lawsuit or join the current one and make it a class action lawsuit, as can a lot of other people. He went to a better school after getting Shedeur killed that first season. Who are you talking about? Steve McNair was like the last time that HBCU QB went in the first round. Okay, was that 95? It breaks my heart to watch old Buffs games, to listen to the commentators talking about how Shedeur is supposed to be a first quarterback taken on the draft, only to watch him get immorally attacked. Right. They wanted Shedeur to be publicly humiliated and embarrassed in front of 7 million people. They made sure of it. Isn't Cam from Texas? Yes, West Columbia, I do believe. LOL. Don't forget, he took sacks without coughing up the ball. That's true. He's already battle tested. Right. And that's what we were saying. I have said it multiple times on this podcast. Not only was Shedeur Sanders the most NFL ready QB, I said he was the most battle tested. And when people compared Shedeur Sanders to Cam Ward, I said, Cam Ward is not battle tested. No one else was. Shedeur Sanders is that guy. And that's also the guy they chose to crucify. That's the guy they chose to persecute and publicly humiliate, knowing we're all attached to him. The man has 3 million fans, followers. Some organizations, some NFL franchises don't even have 3 million followers. And imagine when we watch games, we're not watching games alone all the time. Even if we get together virtually, That means it's more than 3 million. It's probably about 5.5 million, which is why he has 3 ads in rotation: Delta Airlines, Ralph Lauren, and Nike. And Gatorade, excuse me, that's 4. 2 legendary, right? And if you don't think of yourself as legendary, who will? But for Black athletes, it seems that the NFL is trying to whip them into submission with the humiliation, the mockery, pushing them down and further around, which degrades their draft stock. They don't do that consistently to anyone else. People talked about how other players got pushed down to the end of the first round. Like Aaron Rodgers, he went 22, but that still was the first round. What happened to Shedeur had never happened before. They singled out Shedeur. They targeted him. They know they didn't want him. They exploited him. They colluded against him. They discriminated against him, and they tried to humiliate him. Yes, we were distraught. It was grotesque. It was disgusting. I had to take a step away. And I've been talking about it every day ever since, pointing out the discrimination against other NFL draft prospects who are quarterbacks, pointing out the excessive sacks that young starting Black quarterbacks have to endure, because there are people that don't want them in that position. And I said that what happened to Shedeur, the discrimination, the colluding, was not new. It was the most extreme case, and 7 million of us saw it. So it should be a class action lawsuit, because yes, we have a case for emotional distress. They lured us there. They knew he was the most popular. They didn't want him, and they wanted him to be there for this public lashing. And we all witnessed it, and it was painful. It was gross. It was traumatizing to see someone who's of good character be treated that way. You essentially lured us all to a public hanging. That's what you did. We didn't want to be a part of that. So yes, there's a case, and we need to figure out how to make it a class action lawsuit for $1 billion. There's evidence to prove everything alleged. They ignored the Jackson State years. Yes. And that's why I'm like, he was certified at Jackson State. And that's what they were upset about. And they took offense to when he said, if you don't want to change the culture or change the program, don't draft me. They saw a Black man having choices when they prefer their Black athletes submissive, because why? They believe they have lower cognitive functioning. That's what they paid $1 billion to basically try to rectify in 2021. But just because you aren't doing it where concussion and head injuries are concerned doesn't mean you're not doing it in the NFL draft and against your Black quarterbacks. That's likely your motivation for the cruel treatment towards Black quarterbacks. We don't think you're good enough, and yet you keep becoming the majority. Well, your argument is with God, not these elite Black men. So understand that all the hurdles and obstacles that Black quarterbacks have to face, that's why they're the majority, because they're that good. Liars. Yes. They basically lured all of us and Shedeur to a public lynching, to embarrass him publicly in front of an audience of 7 million people was the most disgusting thing. And then for the NFL to lie and blame the Falcons when they know they sent out his phone number, and to protect the identity of the Ole Miss prank caller, and to let people think it's that man's son. What if somebody hurts that man's son and it wasn't him? But that's what they're letting people think when they could clearly clear up who it is, but they refuse to do it. So you see who they're protecting, and then you see who they're harming. They don't appreciate Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is too good to be in Cleveland. They're treating him like he's table scraps, when actually they are the table scraps. They're treating him like he truly has no talent, when we know he's that guy. And they keep trying to make the defamatory statements stick. And entitled doesn't even make sense, because you don't even have any proof of that. And it's subjective. That's not what you use to evaluate a quarterback. Then they wanted to say his interviews were trash, but they were the only team to say that. No other team went on the record with anything negative about Shedeur. Exactly. Did all of this is the inferiority myth, right? Got too many people brainwashed, right? I agree. Hit the like buttons. Thank you so much. Thank you, Political Lil. I appreciate you. Didn't have a problem until Tom Brady retired because he was beating them all back in his day. They really can't stand black quarterbacks. Now the champs are biracial black or full black. Facts. And 9 decades after they banned black players from becoming quarterbacks, it was Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts who made it to the Super Bowl. See, you could see the change. And you could see that Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts made it to the Super Bowl for the first time, 2 black QBs. But then, like this year, who played in the Super Bowl? The same 2 people. So it repeated itself. And it's going to keep repeating itself. But see, this year, it was noticeable until that tight end dropped that ball against Baltimore, which nobody thinks, if you're paying attention, that was an accident. People said, it's funny, had he caught that ball, there would have been 4 black quarterbacks competing in the title games, AFC and NFC, for the Super Bowl. So instead of just the 2 getting there, now it's 4-2. And just like 2024, people think you can't say it's racism because there were 3 black quarterbacks in the top 10. Look at what happened to those quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, generational talent, being sacked 66 times, and they have to fix him. Not only is that humiliation, you're saying he's not that good. So you're trying to destroy generational talent rather than appreciate it and celebrate it because you don't want to see black quarterbacks rise. That's disgusting. It makes no sense. This is a business. You're supposed to want to win and make money. You would rather lose money than have the majority of your black quarterbacks start. You would rather sully your brand. You would rather draft based on preference and not talent, which tells your fans who paid thousands of dollars to watch you, this ain't about winning. This is about preservation of the racial hierarchy. We can't have blacks that we think are inferior to whites being the majority of starting quarterbacks. That's what this was about. And they lured Shedeur, knowing this, to publicly humiliate him because what did they say? He thinks highly of himself. That's what he's supposed to do. That alone told you that they wanted to take him down a notch. Just like they used to do black men during slavery who thought of themselves. They wanted to break the buck, tie him to a tree in front of others to teach them a lesson that y'all don't need to think highly of yourselves. In 2025, and the majority of your players are black, and this is what you do. That's why when I did the video recently, I said what? Donald Sterling lost his team because he was heard on audio making racist comments. The NFL is documented for having racist practice and policies. And after what happened to Shedeur, what NFL team should lose their franchise and be forced to sell it? The New York Giants. Because the prank is connected to them, to the executives, that old misconnection. But they won't even hold themselves accountable and find themselves or anybody else to hold them accountable for intentionally sending out Shedeur's information to 2,000 people with a waiver wire attachment, making fun of him that you're going to get cut. And how do we see Cleveland treating Shedeur? Like, we don't want you. You ain't going to be here no way. They wouldn't even give him his number. Travis Hunter got his number from college. Warren Moon unretired the number 1 worn by Cam at Miami so he could wear it in the NFL. And Warren Moon was one of those black quarterbacks that they ostracized and made him go to Canada first. The NFL has an ugly history of racism, discrimination, and collusion against black quarterbacks, period. And a case can be made against draft prospect QBs in the NFL draft. Everything is documented. It's not hard to prove that fans were emotionally distraught. You lured us there to watch. We just didn't know that that's what it was going to happen. That was like somebody taking you to the movies and telling you you're getting ready to watch a romantic comedy, but then they turn on the exorcism. I don't want to see that. You can't traumatize people like that. That was a public lashing because he thinks highly of himself and the NFL doesn't think highly of black quarterbacks. That's what happened. $1 billion lawsuit, class action. That's what it should be. All them big time receivers turn on the tape and immediately want to play with Shedeur. Heck yeah. And then Shedeur Sanders is the only quarterback in the draft to have his entire wide receiver core in the NFL now. And then what people saying, what Travis made Shedeur look good. They only tearing Shedeur down, not because he's a Sanders, but because he's a black quarterback and he's about to become number 17 to 32. If this goes to court, the NFL's going to lose. They have a pattern in history of everything alleged. Racism, discrimination, and collusion. Fans have a connection to the teams. They pay millions of dollars for this. They're going to lose if it goes to court, which is why it should be a class action lawsuit. It technically should, because a lot of us have it documented how upset we were. Whether you tweeted it out, whether you made a video about it, whether you cried about it at home, you have witnesses. You need to establish a casual connection, witnesses, documentation, etc. It's all done. This is the modern era where people record everything. There were viral videos going around of how upset people were. This should be a class action lawsuit. Or go file your own. If you ask me, 8 more people need to file a $100 million lawsuit because that's $1 billion right there. And that lets them know. A lot of us, you upset a lot of us with this. You led this kid to slaughter in front of us and you lured us to watch it and we didn't want to. We didn't ask for this. We didn't sign up for this. We don't sign up for racism. We want to watch a football game. But it's clearly not about the competitive sport of football anymore, is it? That's what Stephen A. said. Okay, the NFL draft is not about talent anymore. And if the NFL draft is not about talent, the NFL is not interested in building winning teams, which means winning is not the priority. So why should we pay for this crap? I would just go watch college football. Hell with it. I can't stand to see my favorite players being treated this way. It's painful. It's traumatizing. It's traumatic. Yes, a lot of people were emotionally distraught and can prove it in court. So for the people who think this is a frivolous lawsuit, stay tuned. Because you're going to see some new lawsuits pop up. You might see a class action lawsuit. The fact that this came as a shock to us, then we clearly are not prepared for what they are cooking up in the political realm. Okay, I mean, that's a possibility. But in the political realm, anything is bound to happen. This is sports. This is football. I've never seen anything like this myself. I saw what happened to Lamar Jackson. I see how they do Jalen Hurts. This was the most extreme case of all of that. All of it. This was the most extreme case because of what was at stake. Black quarterback Shedeur Sanders becoming 17 to 32, which is honestly why I think he should wear jersey number 17. But so should every black quarterback coming in this class. Jalen Milroe too. And that's what I mean by they didn't think this through. So you did all of this to make sure that Shedeur Sanders didn't go as QB1 in the first round. You robbed him of his money. You tried to embarrass and humiliate him. You dragged us, you lured us to watch it, which means you traumatized all of us. Did you not realize, even though you pushed Jalen Milroe down to number 94, that if he's QB2 behind Sam Darnold, just because you paid Sam Darnold $100 million, does not mean Sam Darnold cannot get hurt. And Jalen Milroe could then become number 17 because you thought ostracizing Shedeur was the end of it? No. That's how you know that they wanted to humiliate Shedeur because he thinks highly of himself. That's why people say this is complex. It's complex and simple at the same time. Racism, discrimination, and collusion to keep Shedeur out the top spot in the draft because Cam Ward is already listed as QB1 on Tennessee's roster, and you didn't want Shedeur to be listed as QB1, number 17. And you wasn't going to draft him. And you hid behind that he's entitled when you have no proof of that. So you risked it all because you dislike black quarterbacks that much. It's just more of the same. How they treat these black quarterbacks in the draft. They work to devalue them. They don't want to pay them the big money. So I'm going to push you down in a further round. They were going to make Shedeur Sanders an undrafted free agent. As good as he was, and what this is show that they have the power to do it. And how dare you think you have the audacity to choose for yourself? You are to be submissive. How do all these other black players feel about having to be submissive and assert yourself to their will? The only person whose will you should assert yourself to is who? Jesus. So they doing too much. They exposed themselves in trying to humiliate Shedeur. The prank exposed that that's exactly what they were trying to do. And now they exposed that they work together to lure us there and lure him there for a public lashing, public embarrassment, public humiliation. It's crazy that they thought we would think that this would be funny, that we thought this is justified, that we will be okay with this. What kind of people do they think we are? I don't want to watch anything like that. That's like taking me outside and there's two people fighting and you want me to stand there and watch it. I'm not watching that. I don't even watch boxing. I think boxing is gross. I know it's a sport, but I think it's gross. All the blood and gore, like why are you beating on each other? So why would I want you to publicly humiliate a good guy? Did you not care what black people was going to think about this? Or we not supposed to care about each other? See, that's that plantation mentality. And that's what's going to upend the NFL. Agree. Mm-hmm. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward. Yep, absolutely. That's 4 right there. Yep. Remember that game last year where that one linebacker tried to take Shedeur's knees out? Yep. And was there even a call? No. You see what I'm saying? So I actually said to myself, I don't want Shedeur in Cleveland. I don't. And then when I look at the fact of how some people work to sabotage Shedeur in the draft, the way some people worked at CU to sabotage Shedeur after he was nicknamed Mr. 500, what did they do? Start allowing him to get sacked so he doesn't get those yards. That was on his own team. So I said to myself, let me apply this to the NFL. I'd rather he be number 5 and never take a snap than for them to treat Shedeur like the Kansas game, try to take his knees out, or to intentionally allow him to get sacked because they didn't want to draft him. They got forced into it. But see, that's karma. And let me tell you why. Y'all were the ones who went on the record that you was interested in him so much that you met with him extensively. So yeah, you got forced to take him because you pretended like you was going to draft him, but you wasn't. So now you got to do it. And that's why they treat him like he table scraps and we don't like it. I think somebody should sue Cleveland, to be honest. They won't give him his jersey number. They're talking about, well, he's last behind the depth chart. He need to come in and earn his keep. Like he a damn slacker. Like, how dare you? There are people out there that you could use that against, but you don't. You try to tear down this young kid because he's black and a quarterback. And you wanted him, and then you couldn't afford him. And then now you want to tear him down and make him feel devalued. You should be happy that you have him. He actually too good for y'all. Because y'all have had 40 quarterbacks in 25 years. That's gross. That's instability. That kills careers. And if they didn't want Shedeur, they should have never invited him to the combine. Yeah, anybody that says, and I agree with you. Who said that? G. I totally agree with you. Like, okay, Tom Brady sent out a post to Shedeur. I mean, like a text to him during the draft, basically saying he went the sixth round. First of all, okay, I don't know Tom Brady's records in college. That is bullshit. Just because Tom Brady got robbed, don't mean Shedeur should have got robbed. I don't know if Tom Brady was ever projected to go in the top five. Shedeur Sanders was top 21 for sure. And that didn't change till later. That did not change until a week before the draft. We watched as they were like, oh, he's falling from 3 to 6, which was the Raiders, or 6 to 9, which was the Saints, or 9 to 21, which was the Steelers. What they did to him was intentional. They colluded against him and were going to let him free fall to embarrass him because they think he's entitled. And they have absolutely no proof. That's what they're hiding behind. Just like the league is hiding behind the Falcons when it was the league that sent out Shedeur's information. Cover up. They're in cover up mode. I asked, how do you move past this? You know, God opened the door clearly for Shedeur to get drafted. So yeah, he's supposed to stay there till God open the door again. And that's the only thing you can say for Shedeur. Just go out there and please God every day. If they don't want to give you that number, you know what? It's okay. Hopefully they assigned him the 12. He did not choose 12. Hopefully that was a message that he's going to be sent to Jacksonville with Travis, because that is one of the conversations that's what's going to happen. They didn't want to draft him. Cleveland's a holding place. That's why they treated him like he's a stray dog with fleas that they don't want in the house. You just here temporarily. And they don't have to treat him like that. They were the ones that met with him extensively. They were the ones who pulled the rug from under him and didn't tell him, which meant they was playing in his face all along, just like the New York Giants. The New York Giants just chose to defame him and lied to justify what they wanted to do. Cleveland went along with the NFL's assertion that they don't want quarterbacks like Shedeur, so they just let him believe it without telling him any different, which is why they met with Dylan Gabriel secretly. They always knew they were going to do something different, but they didn't tell Shedeur. They lured him there. So yeah, they had to take him. So they better treat him right, because I want somebody to sue Cleveland. Coordinated robbery, right? And when people say, oh, it's okay, it don't matter where you got drafted, the $70 million, say that's a goddamn lie. And I started to think to myself, well, maybe Shedeur will end up like Deshaun Watson with a fully guaranteed veteran contract for about $300 million, because punitive damages need to be a part of this. They colluded against him, and there are damages, at minimum $100 million, because that public humiliation needs to be paid for. If his contracts and signing bonus was $70 million, I'm gonna need about 50 more for that public humiliation in front of 7 million people, plus the prank. So man, let's make it a cool 250 to 300 million. That's why people need to go ahead and file their lawsuits. Let these individual lawsuits total up to more than $1 billion, or file a class action lawsuit for more than $1 billion. If they just settled a civil rights lawsuit against Black people, why should it be the same amount? It should be more, because you clearly haven't learned your lesson. You are unethical. You need oversight. You're still discriminating. You didn't learn your lesson. You paid the $1 billion and you're still doing it. So the price has gone up. Yesterday's price is not today's price. They probably need a $10 billion fine or settlement at this point. And it could get there because they lured 7 million people to watch this young man be humiliated this way. I don't know who they thought was going to be okay with that. Again, that's short-sighted. I think it's also because he's a clear Christian. I was thinking about that too, because there's another kid, a young man named McMillan. So McMillan is a wide receiver that was drafted from Arizona to the Panthers, right? And he went to his draft party. He's Polynesian, and he explained that in the Polynesian culture, all of the glory goes to the ancestors. They don't celebrate for themselves. So he turned his draft party into like a praise and worship session where he was praising God through song, and I posted in the comments, I wonder why the NFL doesn't hype this kid up. So I started thinking to myself, is this happening because he's Christian? Like he's outwardly Christian with it? See, Shedeur doesn't fit a stereotype. That's one of the reasons why they wanted to hang him and persecute him. He don't fit the stereotype. I bet if he fit the stereotype, they would have been proud, cheesing and grinning in his face. He doesn't fit a stereotype. He's Black excellence, something that they don't believe in because why? They believe that Blacks are inferior to whites, that Black NFL players have lower cognitive functioning than whites. These were practices, these were policies. So $100 million isn't enough for somebody that in 2021 and is still fighting it in 2024, $1 billion settlement. The price got to go up because they have zero accountability. They fear no consequences at all. They drafted him because they got called stupid by the president and that prank went viral. And they still were lying and covering up by scapegoating the Atlanta Falcons when they know all full well it was the league itself that sent out his information to 2,000 people, talking about only a few people saw it when they sent it to 2,000 people. Look at all of the gross lies that they tell. $1 billion is not even enough. 100 million doesn't scratch the surface because they have been doing this. Shedeur is just the most extreme case that they lured 7 million people to, including him. They lured him to this. So yes, there's a casual connection for emotional distress. You damn right. Everybody loves Shedeur, and y'all lured him to a public hanging. They have to keep lying to justify that theft of 75 million. And you know what? The lies aren't even working. They already had to back off from the interviews. I don't know what you're going to say now because we don't believe it. You already been caught lying. If they go to court, they're going to lose. They are going to lose. There will be more lawsuits. Believe me, there will be more lawsuits. And there should be a class action lawsuit. Shedeur could have made 10 million NIL 1 more year college, right? And that's another thing. That ugly display against Shedeur Sanders, that very premeditated public humiliation that they planned for him and lured him and us to, because we damn sure didn't expect that. Nobody did. A lot of college players saw that. And there are several universities that have already increased the price tag for their rosters, 54 billion, 40 billion at minimum. These kids not coming out of college like that next year. You only coming out if you don't get money and you gamble. But look what happened to Quinn Ewers. He gambled. Quinn Ewers, the quarterback at UT. When it came time for the end of the season, somebody offered him between $6 and $8 million to go back to school for 1 more year, even if it was a different school. So just like Carson Beck got $4 million to go to Miami for 1 year, somebody was offering Quinn Ewers $6 to $8 million to go to a college and play football for 1 year. But he wanted to go to the draft because that's these guys' dreams. But that dream is changing. So he went to the draft. They drafted him damn near last. His contract is like Shedeur's, probably just $4 million, which is $1 million a year for 4 years with maybe $500,000 signing bonus, maybe. And his family, his camp alleged collusion because they realized that Jackson Dart and Tyler Shaw were preferences. They weren't the talented QBs. So Quinn Ewers camp came back and said, well, team said they didn't take Quinn Ewers because he's too talented to be a QB2. Why did they just say that about Shedeur? You see the difference? Quinn Ewers gets relegated to last because he's too good to be a QB2, whether you believe that or not. But Shedeur gets defamed, slandered, dragged, targeted, persecuted, humiliated, embarrassed publicly in front of 7 million people because they don't want him to be QB1. Not because he's not good enough, but they just don't want that. So instead of just saying thanks but no thanks, we're going to go in a different direction and don't invite him to the combine because they already knew. They played the game and now they being exposed. So the more they try to blame him, it's not sticking. It's obvious that these people targeted him. It's just not obvious to most people as to why. But it's becoming more apparent. And the lawsuit is integral to it because now people are having conversations. And that's what's supposed to happen, awareness. So if some more people got some lawsuits they need to file. Y'all need to look into it, especially if you can document how upset you were. They talk bad about him prior to him going to a Power 5. Yeah. When he was in high school, Shedeur Sanders was invited to every school, offered by every. He has a whole video where Overtime recorded him going to all these different schools. The moment he decided to go play for his dad at Jackson State, they dropped him down from a 5-star to something else, probably a 3 or 4. They did the same thing to Travis. Travis was a 5-star when he went to Florida State, but the moment he decided to go to HBCU, he lost a star. That's what they do to black players. It starts at college. Brings to mind Remember the Titans, movie where the O-line players let the defensive player go through to injure the black QB. Right. They said Tyrod Taylor got his ribs broken in New York, the team that has never had a black starting quarterback. Tyrod Taylor only played 5 games. End up with his ribs broken in a team that has never had a black starting quarterback? Oversight. The NFL needs oversight. It cannot be trusted to manage itself. Too many unethical practices, policies, and occurrences. When Shedeur becomes the starter, people will be heavily tuned in with the Browns play Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football playoffs. Yeah, but see, the Browns acting like they don't have a star in Shedeur. They trying to treat him like he table scraps. I'm so sick of them. I'm like, you know what? I just need somebody to rescue Shedeur from the Browns. Just please get him to Jacksonville. If that is the talk and they trying to unload Trevor Lawrence, just send Trevor Lawrence to Cleveland and send Shedeur to Jacksonville. I need that to happen. I need that to happen. I'm sick of Cleveland. I want somebody to sue Cleveland. They created this mess. They knew what the plot was, and they participated. So now they want to treat him like a stepchild, like he's Cinderella. You get the hell out of here. They tried to pay Travis to leave. Did try to pay Travis $1.5 million to leave Colorado. They just wanted him to leave Coach Prime's program. 3 schools were supposedly a part of this plot. They didn't care where he went. It was just so Coach Prime wouldn't have him. And look at it. He became the Heisman. Let me say it again as we speak. We're also being reeled in because Amos Brown Bible was sent back to him and any other group that would have a higher alert. They tried to pay Seton. Oh, really? I'm not surprised. Seton is a star already. Colorado have stars. I'm not surprised that DJ McKinney hadn't been poached yet, but I don't think he want to leave. See, DJ McKinney already know he a first round pick. Out of CU already. Why would I leave? Civil rights have been redefined to favor. Oh, really? Thank you for that. Black history is the only true. Looks like it's time for the Crip Walk again. Good morning, everybody. Hey. I was totally exhausted and angry. I saw the pain in Shedeur's eyes. It made me cry. Travis stopped his presser to listen for Shedeur's name. He sure did. He was like, no, I want to listen for Shedeur's name. Yep. Bait and switch practices is very illegal. Yep. They used his name and image and likeness to draw the fans and viewership, knowing that they were going to assassinate his character at the end. Exactly. Very well said, Terrence. Very, very well said. This is on the screen for everybody to see because this is exactly what they did. This is so unethical. That's why I said they absolutely have to have oversight. They cannot be trusted to govern themselves. Too many cases and policies and practices of racism, collusion, defamation. And what happened to Shedeur? They lured us to that. And we did not ask for that. We did not expect that. We didn't want it. And they didn't care what we wanted. They didn't. They only care about what they wanted. They didn't care about Shedeur and they didn't care about the audience that they wanted us to come see. We did not ask for that. That hurt to see him treated like that. He didn't deserve that. Sorry, I must have missed the correlation and the number 17. She only reference I get with 17 is Josh. The number 17 is Shedeur Sanders. When he was drafted as a QB1, whether it's anywhere in the first round, he would have been the 17th black starting quarterback. 17 of 32. That's why I said Jalen Milroe and Shedeur should wear 17. Because this could have been either one of them. But see, the story didn't work with Milroe because his daddy ain't in the league. They sacrificed their relationship with Coach Prime. I want y'all to understand that. The man was just on the NFL Ring of Honors. And I asked the question, what the hell did they expect to happen? They thought the audience was going to be okay with what we saw. They did not think this through. This just like the Deshaun Watson situation. He asked for a trade. The next thing you know, all this dirt gets exposed, but they didn't realize other people were doing the dirt too. So not everybody exposed, which to me explains why he has a $230 million contract and why they hired a black GM to give it to him. Scapegoat. You know you can't give out that kind of money like that without somebody approving it. Unethical. No call. Bucky made us short about it. Brady was never as good as Shedeur. That's what I thought. Because somebody told me, they said Brady was like a QB splitting time with somebody. He was never a Shedeur. Thank you for that. That's what I thought. So, and you know what? And I, Shedeur is forgiven. I know that they godly people. I get it. Tom Brady, get the hell out of my face. Because you sat there and let it happen. And you part owner. You ain't even a coach. You are owner. You know you should have let him get done like that. Tom Brady wasn't projected to go top 5, but he did have some comeback games. But see, the point is, Shedeur Sanders was a lock for the first round. The only lock is the morning of the draft, they locked him out of the first round. They colluded to make sure no team had a grade on him. I'm like, you know what? That's like having friends that don't want you to succeed. And you secretly don't know it. So y'all all just decide that nobody is going to go to, that's like, okay, let's say there's one dress, right? And it's 6 girls want to buy this one dress that's on sale, right? And some people can't afford it, but they don't want the girl to get it. So they make her think it's trash. And they like, you know what? None of us gonna get it. And we like, okay. And they move on. So the girl that really wants it, that could afford it, don't get it. Because the other ones rally around her and convince her that it's trash. Because they can't afford it. That's what happened to Shedeur. That's how these owners move. The term is incestuous. They are incestuous, which means excessively close. They walk in lockstep. And honestly, I think it's because some of the teams can't afford elite talent because they have made horrible decisions. So no team. So it's like basically the teams that don't want to win didn't want to see Shedeur go to a team and help them win. So they all decided he trash. So they trashed him. That's what they did. This happens in life every day. You got a person that you take, let's say you go house shopping and you take your friend. Every house y'all look at, she don't like it. Y'all got to look at a lot of houses before you realize she hating on you. She just don't want you to get a house because she can't afford it. It happens. That's why you don't take friends car shopping. You don't take friends house shopping. Hell, I don't even take friends shopping. I'm good. No, Tom Brady wasn't projected. Right. So Tom Brady can't give Shedeur advice. In fact, you know what? Just shut the hell up. because you didn't have to let that happen. You were an owner, but y'all all colluded, including the people that knew him. He ought to feel guilty because he couldn't talk to me. And I don't know what Coach Prime gonna do because he don't have no friends like he thought. They sacrificed him and Shedeur. I want y'all to know Shedeur grew up with these people. He grew up with these people. He came back a lot from a large deficit, like the Atlanta Falcons gained plenty of times at Michigan. Okay. All right. I agree wholeheartedly. I keep praying for them to do right. They really robbed him. It most definitely mattered where you were drafted. Right. When people keep saying that, I'm like, y'all sound crazy. That man was robbed of $70 million. You think they don't know that? They know they robbed him of $70 million, just like they know they gave Deshaun Watson $230 million fully guaranteed the first time in NFL history. And I think Shedeur gonna end up with one of these contracts because you know what I think? I think they protecting the Ole Miss prank caller because he knows something. He know how he got the inside information and he know what they said. And I have a feeling that somebody was recorded saying some things or documented saying some things that they shouldn't be saying. You know what I mean? They protected that Ole Miss prank caller for a reason. So yeah, they know they robbed him, just like they know they paid Deshaun Watson $230 million fully guaranteed after he settled 23 misconduct civil lawsuits. Who does that? Who gets a raise after that? And I don't mean just any raise. He went from $10 million to $46 million a year. And all he did was ask for a trade. He got the trade and $230 million for the guaranteed. What the hell happened? I think they thought they were exposing him and they were short-sighted and didn't realize he wasn't the only one. So he could expose them all. That's what I think happened. That's what I think happened. They used Shedeur commercials and Prime commercials during the draft. Oh, Lord, jeez. If it goes to court, who will evaluate him to say he's first-round talent? He's already evaluated as first-round talent. And you don't have to, Shedeur not going to court. As you can see, none of the players sue. The fans are suing, and that's what needs to happen. See, the players have been ingrained all their life to believe the NFL is the goal. Only this next generation coming out of college after Shedeur, where they getting $8 million to stay in school, are going to stay. Because they see what happened to Shedeur. They like, yeah, I don't know. Remember, the NIL money is guaranteed. As long as you do play football and go to class. In the NFL, these contracts that y'all hearing about, they're not guaranteed. Only Cam Ward's contract is guaranteed. And every player has to try out for the team. And they don't get paid until the first game. So you're doing all of this with an expectation that on the first game, you will make the 53-man roster and get paid. There are going to be guys practicing with the team, hoping to get to that contract. So really the draft is like a big lollipop. You put candy in children's faces and you entice them to want it. But in the draft, it's just an opportunity. You're drafted with the opportunity. Everybody has to try out. Everybody. I was shocked by that. So it's not what it seems, and it's not guaranteed. And most people don't even make it to the retirement package. And they just got vision benefits last year. They make it seem glamorous, so we'll want to associate. But after what I saw with Shedeur, I would never watch another NFL draft ever. And I promise you, I didn't watch one before, and I'm not watching another one. That was traumatic. That was ridiculous. And it was so unnecessary. If you claim you let Quinn Ewers fall to last because he's too good to be a QB2, why you just didn't do that to Shedeur? Why you had to humiliate him? Why you had to say take him off the board because he entitled? Why you had to go along with the entitled trope that was obviously proven not to be true, that the statement came from, but you still wanted to use it because that's what you wanted to do. Because you know you didn't want him to be the 17th black starting quarterback. And you know that's what he was going to be. $100 billion, is that what that is? Yeah, that's probably about right. 7 million people saw this. They lured us to this. We are emotionally connected to these players. They pay billions of dollars to make sure we are. And you thought it was funny to get us to watch you abuse him. Hell no. I don't watch people fight on Instagram. You know how people watch those? I don't do that. I don't like that. I'm not used to that. I don't want to see that. NIL changing the game. More and more will stay in college. Thank God. They need to stay in college until the NFL is thirsty for talent. Personally, I want there to be a black owned league. I think it'll work. I think Coach Prime should lead the way because the prime effect turns everything into gold. And y'all know we gonna watch it. All of the top 5 HBCU classics have at minimum 50,000 people every single year. So we shall see. All right, y'all, we're gonna get out of here. This was fun. This was fun. This was fun. Not the topic of conversation, but that we all sat together and talked about how we were traumatized by the NFL draft and how it should be a class action lawsuit, and $100 million is not enough. And neither is $1 billion, because they just settled $1 billion civil rights violation lawsuit alleging that black NFL players have inferior brains to whites. So we're going to get out of here. I'm going to thank y'all so much. I'm going to see y'all next time. See y'all next time. That's probably what's going to happen. The oversight, Terrence. I agree. I'm never watching the draft again either. I'm not watching that. Oh, hell no. You're not going to do that to me no more. And they didn't even think about the fans. What makes y'all think we wanted to see that? You clearly lured him there. And when you look into it, you see that they lured him there because they knew before the damn combine that they didn't want quarterbacks like him no more. Regardless of what the hell it meant, you named that you didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur. So you should have not invited Shedeur to any of your festivities, but you wanted to exploit him. And then you wanted him to be there on draft day, and you was mad that he wasn't there. You locked him out the first round. All you was going to do was humiliate him. I'm glad he didn't go to Green Bay. They was mad that he wasn't there. So they want to humiliate him in person. That's just ugly. That's devious, deceitful, and devilish. Savages. Just savages. Savages. So, okay, y'all, I'm going to say goodnight. I'm going to see y'all tomorrow. I'll be traveling tomorrow too. So at some point, I'll probably go live. Might be on location in a different state. So make sure you turn your notifications on. Don't forget, What She Said Sports is on Spotify with the Listen Up podcast on the go. There's 2 episodes out there now. Check it out if you're traveling or if you're cleaning the house or just sitting in a doctor's office waiting. Check out Listen Up by What She Said podcast. Thank you. What happened with The Rock and the XFL? They tried to make a comeback. I don't know. I don't know, because I kind of thought maybe Coach Prime should kind of get involved and become an equity owner with that league, but I don't know. But that's a good question, though. Thank you for that. Is that film? Fia? Thank you, Fia. That's a good question. Great show. I appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much. Peter, thank you. Good night. What She Said. It was my first time watching the draft. Also, I am traumatized. Yeah, I'm out on that. So we need to see how we need to get this class action lawsuit together. I got some research to do. I actually talked to a lawyer today, a big one. So I was thinking maybe they should send out an email. If you were traumatized by what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the NFL draft, call this number for real, because they going to get some calls. 7 million people of us will lure to that. That was horrible. So I'm going to say goodnight, y'all. I appreciate it. I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Have a good night. Get some rest. Thank you. Bless you. All right.